We have our next speaker with us, Dr. Abhishek sir. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you very well. Yeah, hi.
Yes, sir. So I'll just give a brief introduction before we start. So
Yep.
Dr. Abhishek Mahajan sir, he has completed his MBBS and MD, and then he's done a fellowship in cancer imaging and his master's in translational care medicine from KCL London. Presently, he's working as a professor at Tata Memorial Hospital in Mumbai, and his areas of interest include artificial intelligence, radiogenomic, and biomarker imaging, head and neck thoracic imaging. He has over 159 publications and 101 abstracts, and he has given more than 70 lectures. Here, he has worked at Hodgkin's Lab at KCL London, HPV and hypoxia in head and neck cancer. His notable achievements are that he is a recipient of the National AI Task Force grant for setting up artificial intelligence lab for cancer imaging biobank by Niti Aayog, DBT, and Government of India. He has been awarded as the best promising radiologist in the 35 to 40 years age by Indian Express 2018. We welcome you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Let's move on to like, can I just share screen now? Is that
Yes,
okay?
sir.
I'll share my
Yeah.
screen. Can you see my screen? Is it visible?
Yes, sir. It's visible. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, like I have just modified the topic little bit. I have kept it as artificial intelligence in radiology and where do we stand today. The reason being because I thought like just keeping oncology in picture would be restricting ourselves, and I'll predominantly discuss oncology, but also discuss what all other areas where artificial intelligence can help in the patient management. So the purpose of this lecture is to add to your confusion about AI. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Most of us are like worried that we would lose jobs. Like pathologists and radiologists would be the first ones to lose job because they'll be like replacement by the artificial intelligence. But we'll see during the lecture, and we'll see how AI is going to be like an augmented intelligence rather than like an artificial intelligence. Some of the experts have said very bad things, like the future is quite bad, people will lose jobs, as I said, like, but they also feel that the human race will be totally dependent on AI in due course of time, and then there will be people who will be like doing merely minuscule job, and it will be predominantly done by the computers. uh, uh, this is Geoffrey Hinton, and he actually is one of the board of radiologists in the US, and he has actually suggested that the people should stop taking training radiologists now. This is from the New England Journal, one of the major publishing art journals on medicine. They have shown that machine learning will displace much of the work of radiologists and anatomical pathologists. Machine accuracy will some soon exceed the accuracy of humans. And I worked with Cuban. Cuban was my co-fellow in King's College London. Cuban was a neurosurgeon, and he was working on brain images. And Cuban said very nice thing, like in this particular article, that there is one thing which you should avoid, that doing nothing now and complaining later. We should not be complaining. We should not be not doing now and then later complain that we didn't do enough. That means, like, if we are not going to adopt this modality or this particular technology, then it will be our loss, because there sooner or later it is going to replace most of the things. So what happened it in the era of AI? Is the future of radiology in danger? Are there real risks for radiologists as bad as predicted in this media? And should residents and young doctors be afraid of choosing career in radiology? I will review the current status, the technical aspects of AI in clinical radiology. Then I'll give justification of radiologists' fear of AI replacing them in diagnostic process. I'll also illustrate how radiologists can benefit rather than being harmed by AI. And I'll also touch on some part of optimal application and ethics in AI. So this is the curve for publications in the field of machine learning. Machine learning is a broader aspect. Machine learning includes AI, and we can see from 2004 onwards, somewhere between 2005, there are few articles, but suddenly in 2010 there's a steep rise in the number of publications coming in the field of AI, and in the year 2016 it was close to 1800 publications from PubMed. In terms of AI applications and their publications, most of the publications are in radiography. And then second in terms is MR, and then mammography and CT. There are certain other applications also where we can see that the AI can help. So, what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence has been there for quite some time, and without no one claiming the potential dangers or consequences. So, what has changed now? What has changed now is that we are following this something called as the Gartner hype cycle. Gartner hype cycle is something which is used for any new technology which is brought to the market. So, whenever any new technology it comes up to the market, you see that the technology triggers expectation in the market, and then this particular expectation goes through the trough of delusionment, and then there is a plateau of productivity. So I was talking about the Gartner's hype cycle. Gartner's hype cycle is actually for any technology or any new tool or modality or software which comes into the market. And what happens in this Gartner hype cycle is it predicts the evolution of that particular tool. So, like artificial intelligence, if you see that the right now we are at the peak of inflated expectations. That means it's mostly inflated expectations, and this is a hype which is being created in the market, and a lot of fear is there in the market as well. I was discussing this AI that forges the partnership between man and machine. So what actually happens is you have a human intelligence which is based on common sense, morals, imagination, compassion, abstraction, dilemmas, and dreaming and generalization. So we can do all these activities, like we can dream, we can imagine, we have empathy, we are compassionate. At the same time, the cognitive system of the computer has the ability to locate knowledge. It can do pattern identification. It has machine learning in it. It can eliminate bias, and it has endless capacity. So let's say there are like five Abhishek Mahajans, and there is one computer. You can actually take all five Abhisheks and then feed into one particular system and make one single Abhishek. Or like there's actually a whole set of radiology teachers which are there in the hospital. You can take all the valuable information from these radiology teachers and feed into the system and create one single radiology teacher. So that's what AI actually does. So once you start working on AI, you see that the AI gives you adaptability, it gives you autonomy, it gives you collaborative behavior, it gives you human-like interface, it gives you mobility and reactivity. So finally, what is AI actually? It is knowledge plus ability to perceive, feel, comprehend, process, communicate, judge, and learn. All these activities are performed by artificial intelligence. So, what is the advantage? Why do we need AI actually? Why can't we just do with the humans? Uh, the system will never become distracted or forgetful or tired. Like you put AI into reading chest X-rays, and AI will do chest X-ray reading whole day at the same pace and at the same accuracy. It won't get tired or distracted. Let's say I am a radiologist and I'm sitting since morning reporting X-rays, and after 20th X-ray I'm tired. I can't even look at an X-ray, but I'm still forced to work because like there's a lot of work pending and I have to finish my work. So what is eventually happening is I'll start making errors. I'll become forgetful. I'll become tired. My accuracy will go down. Second important thing which it can do is it can duplicate and preserve the expertise. So let's say we have a very important faculty in the hospital who's indispensable, and this particular teacher teaches very, 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 very well. But like he's going to retire now, and what is going to happen? Will we get his expertise ever again? Yes, you can get expertise by having AI enabled system which will learn from this particular faculty and then will give back to the students. the create consistency in decision making. So what happens is there's a consistency. Today my mood is not good. I fought with my wife, and I am in a very terrible mood, and I came to the hospital and I started doing ultrasounds. And what happened, like, I'm not in the mood to actually do ultrasound, so I'm making errors. But such things don't happen with the computers. They are always consistent into making decisions with the same acumen and accuracy. And just imagine that a radiology resident who has joined, the last point, that it will help into decision making for non-experts. So let's say I'm sitting at Tata Memorial Hospital, where we see tons and tons of cancer patients. And what happens in a peripheral center somewhere in the village, where the person is seeing one or two cancer patients in a month. For him to have the same expertise as Tata Memorial Hospital is very difficult, because he has not had that much experience, or he has not been exposed to that many number of cases. So his decision making skills are lower. But you can give him this tool of AI, and he can become from a non-expert to expert by using the artificial intelligence. So, artificial intelligence versus machine learning versus deep learning, what's the difference? I think you all have seen the movie by Alan Turing, describing how Alan Turing actually led to the code generation, and Germany was stopped from bombing United Kingdom. And this was the first artificial intelligence experiment which was taken into account. And since then, there is a Turing competition which happens every year, where people submit their AI algorithms, and then the best algorithm is selected. So, what is artificial intelligence? Again, I'll just, in technical terminology, that's the definition. Computer being able to think, behave, do things as humans might do them. So, any computer which can think, behave, and do things similar to the humans would be labeled as artificial intelligence. There is a subcategory of artificial intelligence which is called as machine learning, where what you do is you give a set of data to the computer and then ask the computer to learn from that data. So that is like a targeted learning, where I'm giving a particular like, in general, if you take the whole artificial intelligence, a niche area would be machine learning, where I will only give to read chest x-rays, and it will learn to read chest x-rays only. That becomes a machine learning algorithm. What is neural network? Neural network is something like a brain of the artificial intelligence. So the brain works like how human brain works. Similarly, the neural network work for the artificial intelligence, which we'll see in the subsequent slides. And then there's something called as deep learning. Deep learning is a complex neural network, how our neurons are like targeting each other. Similarly, the complex neural networks in a machine learning algorithm is called as deep learning. There are a few other terminologies which are very commonly used in science, which is called as radiomics. Radiomics is a way of extracting quantitative features from medical images, and then comparing it with genotype or phenotype. And then these imaging features are actually like, you take a chest x-ray and start reading the chest x-ray, and then you see a CA lung in it, and it tells you that this CA lung will do bad or good. The computer itself will say that this patient is going to live this long. So this is kind of a radiomics experiment. There's something called as a computer-aided diagnosis, which is very commonly used in mammography, where you put a CAD and it automatically detects microcalcification, it automatically detects malignancies. There's something called as computer triage also, which is for classifying. So let's say, like, I have come today to work, and I have yesterday night's CT scans to be reported. So computer triage, what it will do is it will automatically start sorting out the cases. The cases such as trauma, stroke, hemorrhages, computer will automatically find these findings from the images and will make those cases as the first case in my list, so that when I am seeing my list, my case list has been prioritized. So this is very important tool which AI can help. Just a difference between that, CAD is very specific mathematical algorithm, but machine learning can be applied to any modality. So what has changed actually? Why this machine learning is suddenly coming into market? Like, why it was not there before, and why people are talking so much about it? What has changed? There is availability of data. Earlier we used to have film-based radiology. Now we have digital radiology, where everything is on a DICOM data, or on a digital platform. we have processing powers. We have got better computers, which are faster computers, and they are called as the GPUs. So what is a CPU? A normal computer would do in 150 hours. The GPU, which is a high-end computer, would do in 2 hours. So you get because of this high processing speed, you are analyzing more amount of data. So what happens actually? So the system actually works something similar to human brain. You will give an input data, like a child will read something, it will process the information, and then it will generate the answer. So let's say you are teaching A B C D, the computer is learning A B C D, it's trying to understand how A is different than B and why B is different than C, and then it starts giving an output. And then it will make word generation. It can make a bat, it can make a cat, whatever. So this is like a output layer. So as I said, the neural network is something similar to the neurons. So if you see the neurons over here, they are exciting and they are firing, and the terminal neuron is getting excited again. Similarly, in the neural networks of the artificial intelligence, the input gives a signal to the hidden layers, which act as neurons, and then it goes out to the output layer. So this is a very basic unit of neural network. So it has the same function. It has a threshold activation. It can summate the signals, and it gives output signals. So now let's see what happens. As I said, like if I was a human, I would look at the apple, and I'll then see other images like pineapple and other, and I can identify what an apple looks like. Similar to that, the figure of the apple is divided into bits and pieces by the computer, and computer starts understanding how a apple looks, and this is how a computer would start learning something similar to humans. So as I said, the simplest network would be input layer, hidden neurons, and output layer. The simplest example of this is you show multiple images of dogs and multiple images of cats, and then once you show dog again, it will correctly identify dog and cat. But what if I've trained the system for cats, and I give a cub, which is actually the kid of the lion? So what will happen? It might actually make a mistake. It's not it cannot differentiate all the variations in the cat family. So that means that you need a complex neural network. So let's go on to complex neural network, where you have multiple hidden layers. Now you are giving so many hidden layers, so computer is trying to understand even more. So now this is an example, so where we actually was looking only at apple first, and then identifying from the end result. Here what we're doing is we're giving all the fruits first, and by giving all the fruits first, it is using texture, color, shape, and size of this particular image to create what is the final product. So now the computer will automatically differentiate into apples, oranges, pineapples, and other fruits. So if it's still not like complete neural network, it can still make an error. If you give a green apple and a red apple, it may still make some mistake. Or if the apple color is not completely red, it might start thinking it's something else. So what happens is you give a feedback system. So in the feedback system, you give in feedback that you've not correctly identified. It should have been this particular object. So that means there's a feedback system, and the feedback system is the most advanced neural network systems which we have. So what happens if you give too little information, there will be bias. If you're giving very little information to the computer, it may not actually pick up what is to be picked. And if you give too much information, then also it can lead to inaccurate results. Then it will start picking up every small detail, and it will give so many variations and so many answers that even we would not understand. So something like this, if you see like the chest X-ray with the pathology, and the moment you have like like a dirty looking image, these checker boxes are considered as lesions by the computer. It does not understand this is a dirty image. It kind of thinks that it is actually a lesion there. What has happened is there's the classical example is the variation which is seen in the geographical region. So if you have trained your AI algorithm in US, and then you suddenly give a Caucasian population or a African population, it may not work as good as it was working in the US, because the amount of information which was given was from the US candidates. Their phenotype and genotype is different than the Caucasians and Africans, so it may not work. So this is a simple example that the national lung screening trial in the US was performing very well using AI, but when they used the same in the UK, by Oxford University used it, the performance was very poor because it was not trained on UK data. So again, this is a very complex slide. It's machine learning. Machine learning can be divided into three groups. It's supervised learning, it's unsupervised learning, and it's reinforced learning. So we'll see like these three important learning methods, how the computer learns. In the supervised learning, what you do is you give a input data. You split the data into training and test data set. So let's say I am giving we'll go to the next image so you'll understand here now. So what is happening here is like you have a set of images and you have divided them into two parts. So there is a training data and a test data. The training data is used by the computer to understand what is happening in the data, and it keeps understanding it, and then it applies it on the test data and gives you an answer. So let's say I have had 100 chest x-rays. I will divide into 70 and 30 ratio. 70 I'll give as training, 30 I'll give as test data set. 70 from the 70 chest x-rays, computer will learn, and from on the 30 chest x-rays, it will apply. So we know that inherently what is the actual the outcome. We will check whether computer has performed the same outcome or not. So this is the simplest method of called as supervised learning, where you're supervising it. The second is unsupervised, where you do not label the data. You just give bunch of things and let computer on its own segregate or cluster into smaller parts. So a best example is if you give a bunch of coins which are of different colors, computer will start analyzing and will group them into four groups. Like if there are four colors, so it has grouped into four groups. Similarly, if you want to classify grades of any malignancy, computer will start understanding that this is grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and grade 4, but it will not label it as grade 1. It will say this is category 1, this is category 2, this is category 3, and category 4. So it's like called as clustering. So this is unsupervised learning. And then there is reinforced learning. In the reinforced learning, as I said, like the most complex neural network will have a feedback system. So this is the feedback learning where the computer is trying to go and walk through this maze pattern, but it comes across a wall and then it cannot go ahead, and then it gets to know that I have to now take a right turn, left turn. So turning and thinking power and reasoning, when it comes into play, it becomes a reinforced learning. So this is the very advanced form of learning, which is used for traffic monitoring. It is used for doing the traffic police can give challans based on this, because it's tracking the cars or the vehicles on real time. So for using this, the kind of information which you're giving to the computer is in a language. So the normally what this language is called as natural language processing. So what you have an unstructured form of data, like a lot of words are there, you form a structured formation and then you present it to the computer. So just imagine you use mobile phones every day, and you might have seen that if you write happy, it tells you either to write happy birthday. You write many, it tells you many returns of the day. That means computer, your mobile is having inbuilt AI. It's trying to understand that what will be your next step. So similarly, the computer here is trying to understand, like it is reading day-to-day activity and try to split this activity into multiple codes so that next day it will do on its own. You don't have to actually tell the computer to do it. And then comes the radiomic cycle. So this is the area where which I'll be targeting, because it's machine learning itself is very vast, and artificial intelligence is a vaster subject which cannot be finished in an hour's lecture, because it needs a lot of understanding. But understand radiomics. Radiomics is what radiologists use. The artificial intelligence used in radiology is called as radiomics, and it has parts. So first part is acquisition of the image, acquiring a chest x-ray, then splitting the chest x-ray into multiple parts, and then taking out features and then doing a analysis with any genotype or phenotype. So I have taken a CT scan of the patient. A patient was on the machine. the CT scan images came. So this is image acquisition. We excluded the mediastinum, and we are seeing only the lung parenchyma. So this is segmentation. Then I started looking at the lung parenchyma in depth, what kind of lung parenchyma it is, whether it has ILD, lung cancer, tuberculosis, that is feature extraction. And then I compare it with the outcomes that will tell the genomics and radiomics. So this is the final processing of the imaging data. So what currently the how the research is happening in most of the hospitals is that you have population based studies, you have clinical studies, you have imaging studies, you have biological studies, and you have drugs related studies. What the AI will do is it will make a shift of data driven research to from the simple research. The computing power and the artificial intelligence will create this big data which will be used for making other decisions and AI algorithms. So what is healthcare data is a new oil, and the exponentials are the refineries. So basically all the DICOM data, all the medical data has become now the oil for the artificial intelligence algorithms. This is one of my articles. If you have much more interest into reading in depth as to how the chain is actually created by using radiomics and deep learning, you guys are. I can send you the link for this particular article we published in 2018, and it tells how the carcinogenesis, the omics model, and the precision theranostics can be combined together to give precision medicine, and all these components can be read by the artificial intelligence. We are one of the lead champions of the AI Championship of 2018, where we created a model. I'll discuss this model with you guys for GBM segmentation, and GBM means glioblastoma multiforme. This particular algorithm can automatically extract the cancer brain tumor from the MR images of the brain and can tell patient will live how many days. So this is like a predictive model which we have created at Tata Memorial Hospital, and we were the third place tie-up, the only company, actually institution from the Asia which won. If you see, the other one is NVIDIA. NVIDIA is actually a company itself for AI, and the second is the German Cancer Center at Heidelberg. So now we contribute data even to the challenge itself. So now we are contributing our own data to the challenge. We have even devised tools for picking up neurocysticercosis automatically, for picking up abdominal tumors, for picking up chest tumors, breast tumors, for pulmonary metastasis, and for even predicting mutations based on the CT images. And finally, the challenge which I just spoke about, we have now a lab which is working on mutation to image correlation, and then survival prediction, as I said. And last but not the least, we are now starting to use AI to develop anatomical models. So it will automatically detect the urethra, it will automatically detect the trachea or any structure which you want to pick from the image. So how this process is actually done? You have data, you do some identification like cancer stage, modality, molecular features. Then there is raw data. So this raw data has a lot of information. You start annotating. So annotation means you start labeling. This is lung cancer, this is breast cancer, this is liver cancer. That means you are annotating, you are labeling the data. As I said, then you have to divide the data into test and training, and then that feature extraction you can apply and do the final decision making. So how this neural networks would work actually? So if you have an image which is being split into multiple parts, the deeper layer will understand, and the final outcome will be benign or malignant, as I'll show in this particular example. So let's see this example. This is a thyroid lesion on ultrasound. You annotate the thyroid lesion. You send this annotation for deeper reading. This image is actually divided into multiple filters by the computer, and it is trying to understand what is happening in this annotated box. So this is a day-to-day practice. So I'm labeling it as benign. I'm labeling it as benign. Here I've labeled it as papillary carcinoma of the thyroid. So I'm actually annotating or labeling the tumors in this particular case, day-to-day practice.
Now computer is being given this information. Computer is being told that this is benign. Computer is told this is PTC. Computer is told this is papillary carcinoma. So we are feeding information to computer for computer to learn. And finally, the computer automatically starts detecting malignancy and tells you whether the composition, echogenicity, orientation, margins, all the features it will start detecting on its own, and it will say it looks like probably benign or probably malignant. So similar thing can be done in the breast also. So this is an example of breast tumor also, which has been used for creating an AI algorithm. And then finally, the actual computer would give all the answers what a human would give in a ultrasound image. So normally what we do in our day-to-day practice, when I go to hospital, I open my system, I start reading the images, and I give a radiology report. What currently is happening is, at least in our hospital, we do the reading on our own. At the same time, artificial intelligence is also giving its own reading. Then we are blinded to this particular finding, and finally we match the finding. And if there is anything which is new, which is picked by artificial intelligence, we try to add. Or if there is something which is picked wrongly, we try to label it as reject, so that the computer becomes more reinforced and it understands better. So basically this accept, reject, edit and add gives computer more knowledge, something which is similar to humans. And finally, as I said, like you can actually pick this one of the findings, you can add findings, you can delete findings, you can create your report more stronger. So there would be a time when you don't need the radiologist. Chest X-ray is done, directly the AI gives the report. And that would be the actual aim of AI algorithm, which we want from it. So is it just diagnosis which is important in respect to AI? No. AI can even tell what kind of image. Let's say that a patient arrives at emergency department and the patient has symptoms of headache, and headache started just an hour back, and it is really a severe throbbing headache with neck rigidity. You feed in these clinical questions, the AI algorithm automatically tells this patient needs a CT scan of the brain, because the findings in the previous histories was something similar, which the computer had already read. So those patients had got CT scan of the brain. So this patient also should get CT scan of the brain. Now, the computer will also understand that it's an urgent situation, because it has seen that the previously between the findings and the imaging modality, the time was very limited. So it will say, do the imaging faster. Then it will look at the brain and it will do it faster. It will process it, it will perceive it, it will give a report. So actually, AI is working at multiple levels. It is scheduling of the patients, which kind of imaging has to be done. All this process can be done, not only the diagnosis. So as I show you that the patient has reached the emergency trauma center, and now it's divided into further splits, which kind of imaging is required, and finally the report is actually generated. I'll skip this slide because this was not required for you guys. It's too much of high-end information. Now comes the last bit. What is the hype and what is the reality? AI will replace radiologist. I think from my perspective, AI will aid and help the radiologist. So I would not call it as artificial intelligence. I'll call it as augmented intelligence. Stop training radiologists. We don't need them anymore. No, the need is so much over the world that even the machine cannot fulfill the need for radiologists all across. Machine radiologists, no, we don't want machine radiologists. We want some procedures also to be done. We need direct management with intervention. Patients would want to see the doctor. So that's the reason that whether we need a robotic doctor or we need a human doctor, we need a human doctor. It will only assist our work and make our work easier. Coming to the ethics, there are 5 pillars of AI, the ethics of AI: autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, and explicability. Please go through these before you jump on to doing any generating AI algorithm or giving images to any AI company. So what we need to do as a doctor or as a radiologist, we need to adopt the technology. As I said, if you don't adopt the technology, later you will complain. You need to learn the benefits, potential pitfalls, and limitations. You need to learn about IT and coding. It's high time now the doctors should start learning IT and coding and shape conversations on future of medical imaging. What is required from the hospitals and the communities? They should fund our research, testify our research, They should be unbiased and they should give a high quality of education. And what healthcare providers and employers should do, they should avoid the hype, they should invest in radiologists, they should consult faculties and radiology communities. This is a SWOT analysis which I've done for the AI we published this year with the Niti Aayog. So, what is important in terms of AI in India? We have large volumes of data. We have emerging talent pool, like we have the best of the talent pools, and we have availability of qualified personals. So, this is our strength. What is our weakness? There is no resource allocation. The funds are very limited. When a scientist wants to do generate an AI algorithm, the funds are not there. Second thing is lack of awareness and acceptability. So there is like not much awareness. Like I think after this particular lecture, people who have even grasped 5% of what I've said would say that okay, I want to do something in AI as well. So this is like lack of awareness and acceptability. Standardization of data, we lack in standardization. That's one of the thing which lacks in India. FDA in the US has standardized most of the things, but in India, I can do CT scan my way, my friend can do it his way, and the third person can do his own way. So there is no standardization of data. That's one of our weaknesses. Opportunities that the government has really realized that this is an important area, and they're funding, and we are actually being funded. The lab which we are creating is actually funded by Niti Aayog, and it's like 12 crores funding which has come from DBT. It's a very enormous amount of money which they have invested. Public-private partnerships are another opportunity where the private organization can partner with the public organizations. The threat is losing the job, which should not be there. There will be better things to do in life. Legal and ethical issues, which is very important. There are no legal and ethical laws for AI algorithms. So anybody or any person is creating an algorithm, nobody is checking the accuracy. They are selling it, whether they are accurate or not, we don't know. Data privacy issues. Patient has got this imaging done and he has left. Now, who will consent for these images to be used? The consenting and the data privacy issues are very important, and they are threats to us. This is our biobank. This biobank which we are creating is called as MAD and TRAP. So machine learning artificial intelligence database for tumor radiomics Atlas project. It's the center of excellence in AI in the world. The maximum number of radiology and pathology cases are being fed into this particular system. And we have a radiology hub, we have a pathology hub, we have an artificial intelligence hub, we have an R&D hub, and we have a precision informatic tools hub also. And what we are trying to do is we are generating tools to do image analytics, segmentation, predict outcomes, and response to therapy. With that, thank the audience, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take. I thank my collaborators, Dr. Sudeep Gupta, the director, Tata Memorial Hospital, Dr. Swapnil Rane, Dr. Meenakshi Thakur, my head of the department, and my other colleagues from the hospital. Thank you very much, and the national collaborators with us.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really amazing to hear all about artificial intelligence from you today.
Oh,
Okay. So there's a lot of questions, and I'll start with the first question is, can a series of certain films throughout the course of the disease be analyzed by AI?
yeah.
Is that
So
possible?
let's say like a lung cancer patient has multiple CT scans done over follow-up intervals, and you can use this information. This is called as temporal evolution of disease. So when you use multiple timelines information, the algorithm tries to understand whether. So what if I give 10 patients who have lived and they died after lung cancer, and then I've given the images of these patients. Now what the algorithm has learned is it will try to identify the next. If I give a new patient, it will tell this patient is going to progress at the third scan, or it is going to progress at the fifth scan, or it is going to die at 100th day. So this is the kind of thing which is temporal AI algorithms that can be done.
Okay. And so the next question is, how much data should be fed before the computer starts learning?
That's a very important question. I would like to know the person name actually. Very important question. Nobody knows this answer. It's a black box, so it's called as black box. The more you have, so by and large, we say for one feature you need to have 100 images. So and in one algorithm there are at least 1,000 features. So 1,000 multiplied by 100, those many images you need to feed into the system. What actually we do is we can't have those many images. So we create images also. So in Iran, they are creating fake chest X-ray images with lesions in it because they can't get so many patients. So they are creating calcification in the chest X-ray, cancer in the chest X-ray. They are man-made images and they're fed into system. So you may not get patient data, but you can create images, and that there is no dearth that you can feed the data into the system. But there is no clear-cut answer. Usually, the important question is how do you split the data? You split data into 70 and 30. 70 should be your training, and 30 should be your test data.
And sir, a lot of students are asking what are the options if somebody wants to pursue AI.
Yeah, so I went on 1 second. Sorry. Yeah. So I was a consultant, and I took up after 5 years of my tenure. I thought like I should learn machine learning, so I went for masters. So I think it was way back in 2014, and now the times are that even students want to learn. I think coding is very important. There's a lot of prospect, especially if you are collaborating with the private public party, the companies who are actually developing the algorithms. There's a lot of scope in the coming, at least in pathology and radiology.
Okay. And sir, Arushi is asking that biomedical engineers have been trained for integrating engineering in medicine. So,
Yes.
do we ourselves have to learn coding, or
See, I'll tell you
how
what.
is it?
It's something like you cannot be a bystander. You have to get actively involved, and you can get actively involved only if you have basic knowledge of coding. So I would suggest that every person, like if tomorrow this person comes and says my algorithm is working like this, the accuracy is 80%. Then I'll look at the algorithm and I'll see the kind of data being fed into the system, and I'll say, sorry, the data was not correct. Now because I've learned little bit of coding, I can actually tell the biomedical engineer. So engineering people would be like excellent at their coding. We are excellent at our medicine side, but both need to know some bit of either. Like even the engineers need to know how a brain tumor looks, how a lung cancer looks, so they also try to learn, and we also try to learn. So I think it's very important that there's a mutual collaboration.
Lastly, sir, what according to you is the progress or the scenario of AI in our Indian healthcare,
So
considering the
yeah,
cost and the
yeah. So I request all the students to just type Niti Aayog and AI for all, which is a very detailed document, so where all the government of India is actually applying artificial intelligence in the field of agriculture, in the field of traffic management, in the field of the banking and finance and medicine. So medicine, they have invested in three important areas. One is ophthalmology, second is cancer, and third is women's and child healthcare. So they've invested huge amount of money into generating algorithms for the betterment of the society. Government is really working on it.
Thank you so much, sir, for that
Thank you.
really amazing session on artificial
I'm really sorry,
intelligence.
like for the technical glitch we had, and it was pleasure being on this platform. Thank you once again for having me. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you so,
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
thank you so much, sir.
Bye.